Hello, everyone. So I'm continuing our series on using Amazon Web Services and Elastic MapReduce to map the common crawl of the World Wide Web. And in this video, I want to show you a quick walkthrough of how to set up your own Elastic MapReduce cluster within the web console itself. So we're only going to be mapping one wet file for this. So what in the world is a wet file, and what do I need to get started? So a wet file is the text portion of the Common Crawl archive. So I'll let you dive into what the Common Crawl is and what wet files are and all those good things. You can go to commoncrawl.org and get all the information in the world that you want. But we're going to start this video by downloading the latest wet files path, and this is what this actually looks like here. It's just a bunch of links to individual archives of the latest round of installments to the Common Crawl corpus. And I'm going to use one of these for my input node of creating my cluster, and I've already gone through and I've added the actual S3 indicator or reference to the beginning of the link. So I'm going to copy that out, and I'm just going to get rid of this so we won't use it anymore. So something else you're going to need is a mapper and a reducer for this exercise. And I already have a mapper and a reducer built. They're both Python files, so I can use them as streaming programs. But you could use all sorts of mappers and reducers. You can build them in Java. You can work with Apache, Pig. You can do all sorts of things with Hive. In EMR. I'll show you that in just a few minutes, but you can also go here to example projects and start working some of your own tutorials and get some mappers and reducers from some of these links. So let's dive in and get started on this. So we've already set up our user, we already set up all of our permissions. We even went through in the last video and set up a link, a virtual link to the command line interface from our own machine, because down the road, we're not going to map one of these files. We're going to map about 100 of these files, but we're not going to be doing that in this video. So let's dive in and let's take a look. So EMR is where we're going to start. Elastic MapReduce is Amazon Web Services sort of instance or version of Hadoop, if you'd like to call it that. We're going to dive into creating a cluster here, and I'm going to go straight to my advanced options. Now, fortunately, EMR is set up just about the way that you need it already, which is great. So you don't have to do a lot of fiddling with it. This all comes in with the free tier, and you just have to pay for your mapping time. So since I have Python files already built, I'm going to set up my step as a streaming program. And you can think of a step as a set of instructions. What are you asking Elastic MapReduce to go out and do? And since I'm going to be using this to go out and map one of the archives in the Common Crawl corpus, I can set up a streaming program to do that. But you can see here, if you have something built in Hive or something built in Pig, or you have an Apache Spark application, or even written your own custom jar that you want to actually push to EMR, you can do that here. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to choose a streaming program. I always want to auto-terminate my clusters. If you don't do this and something happens to your step and it fails, your cluster will continue to run. So if you're like me, these things take a while to configure and even longer to run. So I generally like to set these things up, go out, grab a bite to eat, or get some lunch or something like that. And if your step fails and you get preoccupied and you're gone for a day or two or a week or something like that, that cluster will continue to run and you'll continue to be billed for it. So it won't do that if you terminate your cluster if there's some sort of issue. So I'm just going to give my cluster a default name. I've already uploaded a mapper and a reducer to specific buckets on my S3. There's my mapper. And I'm going to go back and grab my reducer. Same bucket. You can put these pretty much anywhere. Here is the input S3 location. This comes from the wet paths files that I've already showed you. And once you get this in here, hit home. Make sure your cursor goes all the way back to the beginning and that the S3:// common crawl has been added to that like you need it to. Now here's the wacky part of this. Elastic MapReduce will not overwrite files. It will not overwrite files. It will not overwrite folders. So you are going to give Elastic MapReduce a place to put the output of the reduction when it actually does all of its mapping. So the output can be a bucket. I'm going to leave mine like that, but you have to go in and actually give it the name of a bucket that doesn't exist. Now, I ran this earlier, and test 1 does exist, but for all practical purposes, I could have called this test 2. The bottom line here, the last part of this cannot exist already. This is the name of the folder that you want EMR to create for you when it gets through with mapping and reducing. Okay, if I left this just like that, EMR is going to give me an error. My step is going to fail because this bucket exists already and it will not overwrite data. Okay, so for the purposes of this video, I'm going to keep all my naming the same. I'm going to terminate my cluster if something happens. I'm going to go ahead and add the streaming step. Everything here is in place. Here's all the different stuff that I actually set up. If I want to edit it, I can go back and click the little pencil here. Now I'm actually good to go. I've already specified everything that I wanted in EC2 when I set this up, and I'm just using a free tier. Nothing special here. I don't have anything out of the ordinary here. You just make sure you name your clusters because you may have many of these. Get here. I'm not using an EC2 pair because I'm not doing anything with SSL, so I really don't need the pair. I'm accessing EMR directly through my web console that I've already logged into, so it doesn't need to really do anything with the EC2 pair. And then I'm going to create a cluster. Now, I've already done this, so let me pull a little Martha Stewart magic and let me show you what this looks like. So this is going to run, one of these web files will run for about 30 to 45 minutes, hour at most, okay? And if it's successful, it'll say terminated, all steps completed. If it doesn't run completely, it'll say terminated with errors. And let me show you where you actually go and figure out what happened. So if this had errors in it, I could go here under steps after I opened it, and I could open this and click view log files. And 9 times out of 10, it's this syslog right here that's going to show you the errors. There are 4 different log files here that you can see, but you can see mine completed as needed. So I don't have any errors. So let me show you what the output looks like. So I'm going to go back here, going to go to my S3 bucket, going to go to my output bucket, and it should have created this test 1 folder, and there it is. Now when I open this, here is the output from the mapping and the reducing. It's actually the reduction part that does this at the very end. So the mapper goes in, the mapper that has been pre-built. I have set up certain keywords that I want the mapper to go through all of the text files in that archive and count the number of those keywords that it actually finds and where that they came from, what web page that they were actually stored on or within the common crawl results. And that is all passed along to the reducer that then reduces all of those similar instances into one summation and then spits it all out a series of part files. So if you open these part files and you look at them, they're actually just comma separated value text files with a bunch of numbers, and those numbers represent the instances of the keywords that were actually found in all of the text files. So you could just concatenate these together and get one large text file, use it as a CSV file, and slap some headers on it that correspond to the keywords that you were looking for in your mapper, and then you've got the count for your for the beginning of your sentiment analysis. So that's something we'll do in the next video. So hope you enjoyed this and it was helpful to you. Have a good afternoon.